Hello, and welcome to this overview of social class difference where the gentleman outranks the lady. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot. You're watching Random Olive Reads. So, what is social class difference? Within historical romance, it is socially expected to marry within the same class. This is so that we have good breeding and they maintain the social status of all parties involved. For the lords of the ton, they're encouraged to marry proper wives to breed heirs. And if a man falls in love with a woman of a lesser status, the socially acceptable route is to make her his mistress while he marries someone else. Well, that causes a little bit of a sticky situation when he falls in love with someone inappropriate. One Night of Surrender by Darcy Burke is book two of the Wicked Duke series. Isabel is a widow and now governess and runs into her former love when her employer is staying at the Duke's house. Valentine, the Duke of Eastleigh, is being pressured by his grandmother and his sister to get married again, even though he's hesitant of trusting women after the betrayal of his late wife. When he sees Isabel again for the first time in a decade, he's surprised that she's now working as a governess and wants to spend more time with her. Isabel resists as much as she can because she needs to keep a spotless reputation if she ever wants to become headmistress of a school. Circumstances cause her to lose her position as a governess, and Val wants to assist Isabel, even if it's unwise for him to do so. Duke Seeks a Bride by Christy Carlisle is book three of the Love on Holiday series. Our guy Alex is a new duke with a marriage stipulation in his father's will, stating that he needs to marry in 6 months in order to keep his castle in Ireland. His annoyingly meddlesome aunt has tried to matchmake him with a wealthy widowed countess and invites her to the castle for a supposed equestrian charity event. The countess sends her secretary instead, mostly to avoid the matchmaking. Evie is the ultra organized secretary who's been working with the Countess for the past 3 years, but also secretly writes romance novels in her spare time. When she shows up at the castle, she is shocked to find out that they were expecting the Countess, even though a letter should have explained the switch. Alex and Evie have actually met previously before in the garden of a ball, but Evie is very much aware of her social status and that a romance between her and a duke is impossible. It's not actually impossible since this is a romance novel after all, but it takes some time for each person to realize that they really do want and need each other. The Beast and the Bookseller by Eva Devon has a daughter of a bookshop owner who basically runs the shop while her father drowns himself in alcohol after the death of her mother. Turns out that Elizabeth's father has been shirking his duties to a cold and starchy duke who normally receives weekly deliveries of books at his home. The Duke Garrett comes calling at the shop to demand the service that he pays for, or else he'll remove his patronage of the shop. Elizabeth agrees to start making the book deliveries herself, and they both find that they have a love of reading in common. Garrett has his own issues with his crusade against treacherous mental asylums, and he has been somewhat of a cold recluse. With Elizabeth's visits, they grow closer, and he wants very much to care for her. Now, the romance part progressed pretty quickly, with some conflict related to Elizabeth's father and Garrett's general coldness, but it was a relatively quick read and fairly light on the angst. A Most Improper Duchess by Olivia Fleur is book two of the Tales from Honeysuckle Street series. Arlie is a serious and stuffy duke who does not usually socialize, but is somehow convinced into some travel research in Paris for his neighbor's travel agency. To avoid being mobbed by young misses looking for an eligible duke, he's dressed as a commoner during his trip. When he's at a bar in Paris, he sets eyes on a beautiful woman, but he does not have any money to pay for her evening company. Vivian is a ballet dancer slash courtesan who has not had a steady patron in a while, so she's looking for someone who could provide more support than the seemingly penniless Arlie. He bargains with a jeweled cravat pin that she show him some of the sights of Paris for his travel guide, and in the course of spending time together, Arlie is easily smitten and enjoys the carefree man he becomes when he's with her. He very quickly proposes marriage and brings Vivian back to London with him, with the surprise that he's actually a very wealthy duke. Vivian ends up needing a lot of tutoring and adjusting to cope with Arlie's position, which causes a bit of strife, but she's willing to make it work to stay with Arlie. Love with a Scandalous Lord by Lorraine Heath is book 3 of the Daughters of Fortune series. Slightly shallow and naive Lydia is visiting England because her stepfather's dear old ducal dad is dying. There's a little bit of complicated family history there, and we add in another layer with Rhys, the second legitimate son of the Duke and now the Marquess, and soon to take over the dukedom in pretty short order. He has his own sordid past as the gentleman's seducer and knows he won't be able to show his face in society with his new title, since many of the ladies of the ton would recognize him. How he had ended up in this position is a bit of a mystery and slowly gets revealed over the course of the book. Hang on though, it's a juicy story when we finally learn all of it. When we start the book, Lydia is in awe of the glitter of the estate and wants to comport herself as a proper lady and believes that the aristocratic lifestyle is superior than her own life in Texas. She's easily flustered around the very handsome and polished Reese, and he's drawn to her beauty and innocence, even though he knows he shouldn't be. We do eventually get to see that Lydia realizes that there are more important things than society rules and frivolity, so she doesn't stay shallow for too long. Sins of a Wicked Duke by Sophie Jordan is book 1 of the Pennish School for Virtuous Girls series. We start with a tragic prologue of 3 girls who become friends at a terrible girls' school where meals are withheld and punishments are severe. Now, Fallon, as an adult, escapes the unwanted advances of her employer's son and meets a devilish duke who attempts to both save her and seduce her. She rejects him pretty quickly and then decides to dress as a boy for her next employment. Unfortunately, the employment agency has sent her to the Demon Duke himself, where she gets a position as a footman. Although she hopes to escape Dominic's notice, she sees firsthand the wicked behavior that he engages in and can't help expressing signs of disapproval. Dominic has his own troubled backstory with a pious grandfather and physically punishing governess, and pretty much lives up to his wretchedness. He's baffled by his unease around the new footman and not really sure why he cares so much about the boy's approval. He doesn't yet realize that the footman is the very same woman he can't get out of his mind since that chance meeting long ago. My Once and Future Duke by Caroline Linden is book 1 of the Wagers of Sin series. This book starts with a tragic prologue for Sophie, an orphan who's discarded by her Viscount grandfather at a girls' school. Her mother was an opera singer, and her father defied his family's wishes and went ahead and married her. When they passed away, they left Sophie with very little support. She befriends her 2 roommates at school and uses cards to teach mathematics to one of the girls until they're caught. Fast forward to present day, and we start with Jack's point of view, where he is bailing out his brother out of debt at a gambling hell. He sees a beautiful woman gambling with his brother, who just said he was supposed to stay away from the gambling, and somehow ends up winning a week of her company. How, now an adult and without any means of support, Sophie has decided upon gambling as her occupation until she can save enough money to live on. While her bet with Jack is terribly scandalous, she is both angry and intrigued by him. They do end up spending time together at one of his country homes, stuck there with rain and poor road conditions, and quite obviously fall in love. However, Jack is the ever sensible and dutiful Duke who proposes a liaison instead of marriage and pretty much bungles the whole thing up. How the Marquess Was Won by Julianne Long is book 6 of the Pennyroyal Green series. We start off with a Marquess who has been shot, stumbling his way into the pub for help, and then we go backward in time 6 weeks to find out what happened to him. Jules is known as the Lord of Ice by reputation and known for both his command of emotion and his callousness with feelings. He's in Pennyroyal Green for the Redmond house party, where he'll be courting the family niece Lisbeth so he can secure the last of his lost property in her dowry. Except he also meets schoolteacher Phoebe, who has been invited to the same house party as Lisbeth's companion, and he's much more intrigued and entertained by her. They talk and banter and flirt and know that there is no future for them, but still, Jules becomes more open and communicative when he's with Phoebe, and she gets the opportunity to use her wit and intellect and be appreciated for it. Despite the strength of their attraction and clearly much more, she refuses his offer to be his mistress, both hurting his pride and his heart. And while they both try very hard to forget each other, it's not very successful. The Improper Bride by Lily Maxton is book 5 of the Sisters of Scandal series. Henry, the Marquess, is basically the most unlovable, friendless asshole ever, and he nearly dies in a fire at his estate. Miraculously, he survives, but is a curmudgeon during his recovery. The widowed housekeeper Cassandra is somehow tasked by the doctor to keep him occupied, so she asks for lessons in a foreign language. As they spend more time together every day, they grow closer and start to see the person beneath the title or role that each person has. Of course, they've got that whole employer employee relationship there and massive social class differences, so even any affection between them would be improper and lead to heartbreak. Henry's near death experience has also reminded him that he has a duty to marry and sire heirs, so he enlists his sister in hosting a house party and bringing eligible women for him to meet. But none of them compare to Cassandra, so there's a ton of emotional angst here. Fearless Duke by Scarlett Scott is book 6 of the League of Dukes series. Grumpy Duke Benedict has scared off 3 typists who he thought were incompetent, and then their typing school owner Isabella has come to pick a fight. They start the encounter completely at odds, and somehow Isabella is trying to prove her competence by serving as Benedict's typist for the next week. Isabella tries really hard to hold on to propriety and professionalism, as she's learned her lesson in the past with a lord who did not marry her, while Benedict can't seem to keep his hands off of Isabella. Add in Benedict's meddlesome younger sister, and we have lots of chances for compromising situations. Eventually, we run into some danger with those Irish terrorists looming in the background of the entire series, and Benedict starts to realize the depth of his feelings for Isabella. However, Isabella insists that they can't be together due to their differences in social station, and so there's a little bit of convincing to happen here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe to get updates, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.